We receive miracle. Yeah.
Welcome to Faith in the Morning. Something good is going to happen to you today, so expect miracles. Thank you for joining me today. Faith in the Morning exists to help you start your day with faith and encouragement. As we get started, let's go over our 2023 Faith Family Confession. Say it with me. Say, I am the salt of the earth. I am the light of this world. Jesus said it, so I believe it. I am a carrier of the glory of God. Today I will experience the extreme goodness of God. Today I make myself available for God to show His goodness to others through me. Today I am increasing in influence. Today I will see the goodness of God in my life. Today something good is going to happen to me, so I expect miracles. We've been going through the teaching, The Librarian. It's a parable that I wrote years ago that also has teaching how to help you discover God's plan for your life. And so we're going to look at this parable one more time and get into more scriptures so that you can work further in God's plan for your life. Now a certain man was walking through a great city and came upon a great library. This man was very familiar with the city, but had never before seen this library. It was colossal. In his mind, he thought there was no way that he could have missed this giant edifice before. He approached the marble steps and paused as he observed the carefully crafted columns that supported the roof of the entrance. Over the entrance hung a triangular display of statues of philosophers of time past. They all had books in their hand and were in positions of teaching and imparting knowledge. Below all the statues was this phrase written in large capital letters: the beginning of knowledge. As the man gave more attention to the statues, he noticed something that he had not noticed before. It seemed as if all the statues were looking at him. As he proceeded up the steps of the beginning of knowledge, he came to enormous, ornate marble doors. These doors had many languages inscribed on it, the most careful and artistic script. The man looked for the language he knew, and the phrase read, "Through these doors lies wisdom." The man pushed open the door and stood in a magnificent foyer. In the middle of the foyer was a large globe upheld by a semicircular counter. The counter had 8 sections, and each section was a smaller globe. Each smaller globe displayed the knowledge of man concerning the world up to a certain century. The walls of the foyer were filled with bookcases, which were illuminated by an overhanging golden chandelier. Above the chandelier was a domed ceiling painted with the marvelous striking blue of the sky and realistic large white clouds. The more that man observed the ceiling, he noticed that the clouds were moving. While watching the clouds, the breeze that caused them to move blew through the man's hair. "May I help you?" a voice said. That clearly startled the man. "Oh, I didn't mean to startle you. I am the librarian. You must sign in." The man nods, regaining his composure, and heads for the librarian's desk that he missed as he took in the other features of the foyer. The librarian was an older man with a gray beard that drooped slightly lower than his chin. His eyes were kind and grandfatherly. The librarian wore a simple white shirt and khaki pants. He sat behind a waist-high cherry wood counter propped up in an elevated chair. Behind the librarian's desk were even more bookcases, but the books behind him were marked attendance. The old man gestured toward the sign-in sheet as the man made his way over to it. As the man signed in, the librarian asked, "Would you like to see the most precious books?" "Sure," the man casually replied. "Great," the librarian exclaimed as he hurried his way from behind the counter. "This way, this way." The librarian led the man around the giant globe toward a wide hallway. The hallway was lit by the rays of the sun that reflected through the window pane surrounded by golden frames. The man looked out the windows to see courtyards on each side. Each courtyard was filled with well-manicured grass, slate sidewalks, carefully crafted topiaries, marble statues, and beds of yellow roses. As they exited the hallway, they entered into a great hall. The hall was filled with the smell of old books and was well lit by golden hanging chandeliers, mounted decorated lamps, and windows which let in the sun's natural rays. The hall was divided into 4 sections. Each section was filled with bookcases organized into precise rows by topic, date, language, and country of origin. In the middle of the hall was a sculpture of an older man dramatically reading a scroll to marble children's statues at his feet. The statues were surrounded by a small stone protective fence that was bordered by reading benches. From the hall were 3 other hallways, one to the north, one to the west, and one to the east. The man's eyes gravitated upward. There were 3 more floors above him, filled with bookcases, which were lined with more and more books. The man stood in amazement. I've never seen so many books in my life. Come, my friend, there's much more to see, the librarian responded. The two walked toward the center of the hall and began to walk around to the left of the statue display when the man looked to the west and stopped in his tracks. Above the west hallway entrance read, "The Annals of the History of the Planets of the Universe." Mesmerized by the potential knowledge that laid down the hall, the man began to walk toward it, a firm hand on his shoulder, and the kind voice of the librarian prevented him. "Perhaps on your next visit." The man turned toward the librarian with the look of a child in a toy store begging his parent for the latest toy. "For now," the librarian replied, "that great knowledge will not do you any good. But trust me, the precious books you will see will benefit you much more." Resigned to the fact that he would not see the hallway during this tour, he once again followed the librarian around the display and toward the north hallway. The north hallway had no windows but was lit by mounted lanterns. On each side of the hallway were 3 doors that led to different great rooms. As they walked past the second door on the right, the curiosity of the man got the best of him and he opened the door. Lanterns lighted this room as well, but not electric lanterns like the ones he had seen in the hallway, but lanterns used centuries ago. The man examined the room and noticed that instead of books, each shelf was filled with scrolls. The man's attention immediately was fixed on the large golden plaque on the back of the room. His mouth dropped open in amazement as he read the plaque's words, "The Lost Scrolls of the Library of Alexandria." "The library will be closing soon. We must continue," the librarian reminded the man. The man closed the door and continued down the hall. The hallway opened to a circular room that was lined with one continual bookshelf except for openings for hallways that led to the north, northwest, and northeast. The room was bright with light. It was the most lit room in the entire library. Above the bookshelf were 24 stained glass windows. In between each window was an electric lantern. The ceiling was filled with different lights and mirrors that reflected the light in one central direction, toward the middle of the room. In the middle of the room was a giant book. The book was 10 feet in width and length and was positioned on a large wooden pedestal. All the lights in the room focused on this one book. The colored light of the stained glass windows accentuated the pages of the book. The man approached the book and studied the 2 large pages. The first letter of the first word of each page was decorated and crafted into a picture likened to the ones that monks painted centuries ago. As the man read the words of the page, he realized what the book was. "It's a Bible." "Is this the precious book you were referring to?" the man asked the librarian. "Oh, it is very precious. But it's not the book I was referring to. Follow me." Only one hallway left. The two walked down the north hallway. This hallway had no doors or windows, but had one purpose: to lead to the next room. They entered the next room, which was bordered by towering bookshelves, each filled with thick books and accompanied by a few ladders that would give a person access to the highest books. The man followed the librarian to the back of the room to a small table that protruded from the bookshelf. On the table was a singular electric candle. The librarian began to peruse the books in front of him. "Ah, here it is." The librarian pulled out 2 seemingly identical books and laid them on the table. "That's my name," the man exclaimed, as he realized that his name was the title of the 2 books. The librarian opened the 2 books and began to flip through their pages and stopped on a certain page. He motioned for the man to look at the pages. The man read one page of each book and realized that each page described a different account of a certain day of his life. The librarian quickly shut each book and pointed to the book's authors. On one book, the author was the man himself, but on the other book, the author was God. The librarian looked into the man's eyes and said, "You will be judged by the difference of these 2 books." In the parable, the librarian guided the man through the great library of knowledge and wisdom. In the same way, Jesus sent us a librarian who will guide us into all truth. The librarian for our lives is the Holy Spirit. John 16:13 says, "Howbeit when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will guide you into all truth, for he shall not speak of himself, but whatsoever he shall hear, that shall he speak, and he will show you things to come." One of the Holy Spirit's titles is the Spirit of truth. Jesus said he sent him to guide you into all truth. That truth includes God's plan for your life. The Holy Spirit will even show you the path ahead and how you can avoid the pitfalls of the enemy. The Holy Spirit is omniscient. He knows your future better than you know your past. Many people stumble through life and accidentally enter God's plan for their life. It was never God's intention for us to guess our way through life and barely discover his calling for our lives. He sent the Holy Spirit to remove the guessing factor. Just like Jesus lived his life on the earth being led by the Spirit, we are to follow his example and be led by the Spirit. He will show you the plan for your life and enlighten your eyes to how you are currently living. After you inquire of the Lord and determine to do his will no matter what, there are more steps to follow in the leading of the Spirit of God. In the Bible, God gave us 2 prayers that the Holy Spirit can work through to open our eyes to God's plan for your life. We find those prayers in Ephesians chapter 1, verses 15 through 23, and we find those prayers in Colossians chapter 1, verses 9 through 15. And one of the things you'll see in the show notes today, how you can personalize that prayer and pray it for yourself. I pray for myself and for you and for so many others on a regular basis. I encourage you to pray that for yourself, your family, for me, and for others on a regular basis. These prayers are Spirit-inspired prayers that you should pray every single day. So these are things you need to add to your spiritual disciplines that you do every single day. Pray these prayers, and you're going to grow in understanding what God has called you to do. Thank you for joining for Faith in the Morning. I'll see you next time.